Hello everyone, Peter Sibbert here from Dreamcraft Entertainment, and welcome back to the third episode of Dark Secrets Devlogs. Today I'm going to show you my workflow for creating a basic 3D prop for Dark Secrets. As you can see, I'm working in Blender, an open source 3D modeling package that has become more and more popular since its UE upgrade in version 2.5. The model itself took about an hour to make, but since that would be quite tedious to watch, I have sped it up quite a bit and cut away some segments that didn't really add anything to the video. Now let's dig straight into the modeling. I start with a basic primitive and rough out the proportions to have something to work with, and in this case I start with a simple cylinder. Once I'm satisfied with the general length and width of the primitive, I add some more detail by adding more points and edges to work with. I extrude the bottom to create a metal base for the Pitchfork spikes. I continue to add points and edges as needed to build up the lower T section by rounding off ends and adding some more surfaces. As you can see, I'm only working on one side of the model, and this is simply so I can mirror the geometry instead of having to do the same thing all over again on the other side. It also causes the model to be perfectly symmetrical. To create the additional spikes on Pitchfork, I used a circle tool. This to ensure I get a perfect circle as a base instead of modeling it by hand. It has its uses now and then, especially when adding holes into geometry. When I'm done with the major details on model, I rework some areas and tweak the proportions again to make sure they are up par with the concept art, or as in this case, a photo of a fitting pitchfork. Once I'm done with the bottom half, I start working on the handle on top. I use the same basic techniques, just adding surfaces and points as I go. I also use the circle tool here to create the center wooden piece, extruding it into the middle and deleting the excess faces that I don't need. Okay, it seems like the model is done for UV mapping. UV mapping a model is somewhat like cutting it up in smaller pieces and then flatten them onto a flat surface. I do this so our 2D artist can create a texture for the model later to be used in the game. I start by adding seams onto the model where I want it to be split up, and once that's done I unwrap it. In most cases you have to unwrap it multiple times to make sure no parts of the model got stretched in the process, either by moving the seams or manually editing the UV map itself. Once I'm satisfied with the basic UV seams, I move the model to Roadkill, another UV mapping software. I simply unwrap it and fix some seams, and then it's back to Blender to sort things out and pack the parts together. I split the wooden hilt of the model into two parts to make sure I can keep the UV map square, not to waste any excess space. This to ensure all parts get same amount of space in proportion to their size. This technique, however, can cause some minor troubles for our 2D artist, but they have both the tools and the know-how to fix any seams that might come up in the process. There we go. Once I'm happy with the UV map, it's good to do some general checks, like adding a checkered texture to notice any stretched or undeformed areas. No pun intended. I also render out the ambient occlusion texture to make sure everything is nice and smooth before I pack it up and send it away for texturing. This was all I had to show today. Make sure to comment with questions or feedback below, and thanks for watching. Wir sehen es.